Is this thing working? I think it's working. In fact, I think I've been sitting here staring at some kind of notification. All right, I think we're live. Oh, wait, we need to refresh mode. Standard operating procedure around here. All right, what's happening, everybody? So, happy Valentine's Day to everybody watching this. That's the day this is being filmed. So, whatever day you're watching it, happy whatever that day is to you. So, talking about best first mods. You know, Valentine's Day, thinking about your first love. Well, this is a first mod video. How about that? So, here's the thing. The reason why I wanted to touch on this, by the way, if you're watching this, you are either very single or very married. So, congratulations. Love you, baby. Anyway, here's the deal. A lot of questions that do roll across the channel have something to do with what is the best first modification for these cars? What's the best thing that I can do to get the most bang for the buck? What's the least invasive in some cases? What can I do to have a little bit more fun with this contraption without really digging too deep into this car and or truck or whatever it is? Mark is saying newly single. Hey, happy Singles Awareness Day. But either congratulations or condolences. But the thing is that what is the best route for that? And usually when I'm talking to guys about this, they're talking about their modern Mopar. Rarely do I get the question for the Chevy guys, the GM General type of questions typically don't roll across. It's normally about Mopar stuff. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to focus a little bit on the modern Mopars in general. I don't necessarily want this to be part of a total discussion about carbureted stuff and everything else because, well, now that I think about it, it probably would fit in with that as well. But the thing is the older stuff, there's no warranty concerns that you have to worry about. So let's dive into it. Again, the biggest question for me is always, what's the best first mod? I guess my first rebuttal to that is, well, what do you plan on doing with this thing? I mean, do you live near a drag strip? Do you live near an 1/8 mile? Do you live near a 1/4 mile? What exactly are you going to be doing with this thing? Is it a garage queen? Is it an everyday car? Do you rely on this piece of machinery to get you to and from the place that makes you money? All of these questions have got to be on the front end of any discussion when you're talking about modification. The direction that I will try to steer somebody is going to be greatly different if they're relying on their car as a daily driver versus this thing is just a garage queen and they're only planning on taking it out for cruise nights and going to the drag strip and that's it. Also, working at the shop, first question after you ask that is, aside from, finding out what they're going to do with the car is wallet check. How much money and how liquid of assets do you have? What is your credit limit looking like? This is the ugly part of when you're working at a shop type stuff. And this is where guys can kind of get a little bit defensive in a way. But let's face it. I mean, nobody does this kind of work for free. And the reality is that the shop has got to know, again, not only what you're going to be doing with this car, because that's going to steer you to the right list of mods to do to the thing to fit your needs, but they need to understand and be able to address some concerns if you decide, well, you want more and more and more out of the car, but the reality is that you don't have more and more and more to sink into the car. One of the things we like to do was, and it's kind of an odd thing, but I think I've talked more people out of spending money, big sums of money, only to make sure that they were in the shop spending small amounts of money to get bigger gains than maybe, or the same gains that they thought they were going to get, just spend less money and have less risk, I guess, in their vehicles. So I know that's kind of an odd thing to hear from somebody that has worked at a shop, but I mean, it's the difference between being above board and not, actually caring about the person that's sitting across the table from you. You'd be surprised how many folks will actually put their own financial well-being at risk just to keep up with the Joneses that they don't even know. It's just, doing things to impress people that don't even know you and don't even care about what you're doing. That actually burns a lot of people, but I just want to get that out of the way on the front end on this chat first, because that is something that really does come up. And if the shop is really worth their salt and they're really trying to put your best interest first, they're going to ask some hard questions right off the bat, right off the jump, and basically qualify you, not only in terms of what you can do, but what they can do for you. So that's like just kind of housekeeping out of the way real quick. But Marco is in. What's up? Ardell is in. What's up, man? RT guy is in. What's up? Got the flex. Michael's in saying, nice evening for a live. Yes, it did. Ill's saying, catback exhaust is always the first for me. Easy, quick to install, and instant fun. I'm going to get to that. That's part of the theater about it. And that's actually a good point to bring up right off the bat. Marco is in saying, I'm waiting my injectors and fuel pump and tunes from FRP. Very nice. Ken say, get your radar detector. I've never had good luck with radar detectors. But in the whole qualifying, well, they just let me know when I'm about to get a ticket. That's usually about it. And if I'm speeding, I'm really hauling ass too. When I'm on the highway, I am a bit of an aggressive driver just in terms of speed. But if there's a whole lot of traffic, I'll just basically pick whatever lane works best and I'll kick back. I'm usually not really raising hell unless I really just feel like I have to. But when I am speeding, I'm like thinking to myself, it's time and place, and if I'm going to be doing something dumb, I usually do something really dumb. A lot of times radar detectors won't do me much good. So I don't want to jack up my karma with a story. It's real recent too. Anyway, so right off the bat, let's talk about first time modifying. Okay, so in this video really is all encompassing. It's really more of a reinforcement for you guys that have already jumped in the middle of this, and for any of the new guys or the guys that maybe haven't had a chance to do any kind of dive, much less a deep dive into modification. Kind of a good idea of where to start. So with your modern Mopar, if it's a 5.7, if it's a 6.4 Hellcat variant, whatever, again, making sure that you have a clear line of sight to what you want to do with the car. But if you have a Hellcat, I'm going to start with the Hellcat guys first, only because a lot of the Hellcat guys are new to high horsepower. So let me explain what I mean by that. I come to Hellcat by way of working at a shop that built Hellcats, meaning I drove everybody's 600, 700, 800, 900, 1,000 horsepower to the rear wheel cars, 1,100. I've driven all of them. And in fact, had even driven some at the drag strip because of my other previous experience with very fast cars. I was the guy, and still kind of can be in this day, at least for about the next 2 months. If a customer needed a number out of the car, they would tell me to take it to the drag strip. Could be a 9-second car, could be a low 9-second. It didn't matter what it was. All of them fell within that range. But notice it was me driving it and not the owner. That was relatively common. Mainly because these guys didn't know what they were doing. They were coming from, like, say they had 350 horsepower was a lot of horsepower to them coming into this with a V8. Real torquey, but not a whole lot of horsepower. Your typical guy that was maybe Corvette guy getting into one of these real high horsepower, super beefy Mopars. Guys that had more money to throw into the thing to just make go really fast than they had skill set or experience to back that up. And so that's where guys like me come into play. And we get them a number and they can brag to their friends how fast their car is. Fantastic. But for those guys, what I'll typically say is don't do anything to the car. drive the car, learn the car, and this is for any car, but really the higher the power, the more this is important. Uh, my prescription for you guys is to learn the car, get the car out, play with it. Yeah, you're going to have to do some sketchy things to learn and get some understanding and experience underneath you. Get the thing to autocross courses or whatever you can, but learn how that car is going to act. That is true for all cars, but it's primarily true for these guys that are new to some of these big horsepower cars. They have a tendency to take for granted that, well, I had a Corvette back in 2003. This should be the same thing, right? No. When you're dealing with cars with literally double the power, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and it tends to go wrong in a really quick pace. So learn the car more than anything else. Then you can start talking about pulleys and all the rest of the crap that comes with that, and that just starts the clock. Tick, 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 tick. Okay, how quick is this guy going to get scared of it and get rid of it? So again, that's usually what happens with the Hellcat guys. So we can brush that aside for right now. Let's talk about the NA guys. Guys, look, for your Gen 3 Hemis, and I'm really right now talking about the 8-speed cars. The thing is, I hate to tell you guys this, but they're already really good from the factory. Most of the gains that come with the Gen 3 Hemis, well, for the 6.4 guys, it's going to come with tuning. You can get a little bit more bottom end torque with some long tube headers, get a little bit of sound out of it. But for the most part, the average guy is not going to see any real gain from dyno tuning. You might pick up 15 or 20 horsepower on a 392, but when you're already making close to 500, that 20 horsepower is just a number on a piece of paper. It really doesn't mean anything from a driving experience. All of that comes with transmission tuning. Now, that being said, the later cars, really 2018 and 2019 and up, are a lot better than the 15 to 18s. And again, primarily the 19 and up. 18 and up are really there too. But I think you get what I'm saying. There's a difference with cam phasing. The cars just run better, and they're in general just a little bit better at the drag strip. Those cars will run at 1150 with very little race prep. So there's not a lot that you have to do to them to really eke a number out of them. So what do you do for performance? Well, again, the tuning thing comes into play. The problem with tuning, though, with those cars is that it immediately eliminates any semblance or chance that you would have for warranty. Not that tuning those cars would necessarily cause you any problems, not even long term, but I say that with one catch. It depends on who's doing the tuning. Somebody that knows what they're doing with a Mopar can enhance some things in the car that'll make it a little bit more lively, a little bit peppier underfoot, which is really all most guys are looking for anyway. And if you want to throw a set of headers on it, now's the time to do it. And throw a Hellcat intake with a Hellcat air filter on it, just to have the snorkel, and you'll be good to go. That's all the things you would need to do to that car. And it would run just fine. I mean, we're talking about a car that on a drag pack, pull the front passenger seat out. That's an 1130 car, all right? 1120 car in some cases. That's where you're going to be with that thing with the right setup. It's damn near a 10-second car just with those very, very minor modifications. A lot of folks don't believe it, but we were doing that with 2016 cars back in 2017. And was blowing everybody's mind. How are you running almost 10 seconds with a freaking stock car? In fact, it's so little done to the thing that, I mean, that all the track prep was done in the parking lot on one car. And the other car, the seat was pulled just so that it could carry the tires from the track or from the house to the track. It was really more done out of convenience than anything else. So, but a lot of folks were freaking out. How can you be running 1120s, 11 teens even, with practically nothing done to the car? That's because you didn't have to do anything to the 6.4s. They already came pretty good. The long tube thing, again, a little bit better torque out of the hole, no real horsepower there. The stock shorties were good. You can open up the stock shorties and just kind of blueprint the whole system. and still really not get anything. Frankly, I did that. I tried it. In fact, that was one of the keys that helped us, again, whittle the car down full weight on 20s into the low 1130s. And so that was a big claim to fame. A lot of folks didn't believe it. I was getting accused of spraying the car. And it's like, dude, not only will I give you $1,000 if you can find nitrous anywhere in this car, because there won't be any, but feel free to come by and check it out. Feel free to come by and look at the car, do whatever you want. And this is at a point in time where, an 1130 was an unheard of number. There were guys that weren't able to cover that number in some Hellcats, obviously driver error, but still you get the idea. Now, for you guys that are looking into the 5.7s, this is where things can get a little bit more enjoyable. First modification in a 5.7 can be anything as simple as, again, the Hellcat airbox with the Hellcat filter. That's a fun one. Doesn't cost really much of anything. And it looks cool under the hood. The next thing that you can do is, and by the way, if you have an SRT or a Dynamics package with the brake cooler ducts, you can always do the brake cooler mod where you cut part of the brake cooler out, and it just helps to funnel cold air up into that area where it pulls air from. But getting back to the 5.7, the 5.7, the earlier 5.7s, 15, 16, 17, the ones without the performance exhaust, find somebody that's ditching an SRT exhaust for somebody else's catback, and you can go that route and it'll sound great and perform exceedingly well. Anything along those lines is good, though. Any of the Mopar style exhausts that are basically just a 2 3/4 inch exhaust with magnet flows and put a set of SRT manifolds on the car, you can do that or put long tubes on it. Depends on what your budget is calling for. Either way, though, you're going to see a gain. I would probably, if I'm suggesting this and it's my money getting spent or I'm advising somebody, I say, look, throw the Cook's long tube headers on it, put a MagnaFlow cat back on it, because that's going to be basically the same as if you put an SRT cat back on it. Put it together with some 200 cell metallic substrate catalytic converters. And what that'll do is that'll kind of tone the exhaust down. It actually makes it sound better. It doesn't hurt performance. It just kind of chills it out a little bit. And that right there, along with the tune to make it work, is all you really have to do, except for maybe a 309 limited slip diff. For the street, that is the ultimate put together for a 5.7. And frankly, I wouldn't really take it much further than that. I know a lot of guys want to get the Z Automotive controller and go with a 6.4 manifold. I would caution that a little bit, only because it's a lot of money. You're looking at $900 for the manifold, and so $900 for the manifold, whatever the controller costs. Say it's $300. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. You're looking at $1,200 for a gain that is, and again, there's other tuning that's involved and but it's actually not that hard to do. It's pretty easy stuff. There's just not a lot in there. You can pick up some power. It'll pick up a little bit of torque across the board. Think of it as like the last mod that you would do to the car. But realistically, you can go with the stock intake manifold. That stock intake manifold on the 5.7s in practice has done about as well as putting a 6.1 aluminum intake manifold on the car. They basically work about the same. So keep the stock 80 millimeter throttle body. You don't need any more than that. Again, Hellcat airbox filter and snorkel. That's going to put you right where you need to be. Now, if you want to step it up a little bit more, and again, you're working with a tuner that can make the adjustments for this change, then you can go with a 370 rear gear. And that would be for, again, we're talking only about the 8-speed cars here. Now, I don't really want to get into the NAG 1 stuff. But for the 8-speed cars, that would be going with the manual rear differential, the manual Hellcat rear diff. Bolts right in, no big deal, and it would wake the car up quite a bit. It will make first gear practically useless, but hey, that's part of the fun, right? And I run a 309 rear diff on my Hellcat. They come with a 262. It's a pretty big change, and it's not like the car is undrivable. It's just life's fun when you got more gear. With the only downside to that, though, is it's going to tack a little high going down the highway, but it's not all that bad, I guess. It's somewhat similar if you were to have a Ram with a 392 gear out back. So, but that I would only really suggest if you are planning on taking the car to the drag strip and you're going to be running a drag pack and you can actually take advantage of that gear. It can be fun on the street, but the reality is that the 309 with the transmission gearing you're already coming to the party with is really good. Now, that's where I would stop with a 5.7. Now, in the past, you guys have heard me talking about, man, if I just had a 5.7, put a Maggie on it, do, Magnuson supercharger. Look, here's the thing. I've got to start with the guys with the mindset that this is a car that this guy's going to have to drive to and from work. It's got to get stuck in traffic. If the thing breaks, it needs to be at least mechanic friendly to fix and is not going to overstress any of the parts that are involved. And although a supercharger isn't necessarily going to put that HP 70 in any danger, with the 5.7, you're talking about a whole lot of money. And I just don't know that I would ever just jump to going with the supercharger. I would probably venture a guess and say most of the guys that are messing around with a 5.7 are primarily going with the 5.7 because of budgetary reasons. You got a cool, big, comfortable hot rod to play around in, big Grand Tour with a 5.7 liter Hemi engine in it. That's already a good place to start. Do a few things to wake it up, pep it up a little bit, and that car is going to be a whole lot of fun. And, is it expensive? Yeah, but in this game, you do got to pay to play a little bit. You should know that coming into this. But the big part of this, though, again, is warranty considerations. If you are more concerned about warranty than anything else, and warranty is important. I mean, it's what keeps you in it keeps you from having to be out of pocket, right? Well, there's a few mods you can do that'll be okay for warranty, and that would be the Hellcat airbox, which may help a little bit, wake the car up slightly, and go with that. Maybe a cat back in a pedal commander, pedal box, something that's going to wake up the throttle response that way. That works out just as well. You don't have to put headers on the car. You don't have to tune the car to just have fun with the thing. Again, a pedal commander is a great way to start. And it tickles an itch for me. And what I mean by that is this is one of those things with these modern cars. I'm surprised just isn't part of how the car comes from the factory. All of these cars have electronic throttles, and why it is that you can't adjust the sensitivity of that throttle is strange to me. So I like the idea of a pedal commander, if for no other reason that I feel like the car should be able to be adjusted in that respect anyway. And it's not going to void your warranty, or it's easily removable if you need to take the car in for service. But from there, again, just, something like a Hellcat airbox is always cool. Allows cooler air to come into that box, and that helps with performance and efficiency in general. And from that, again, it doesn't affect drivability. I'd say go with that. But anyway, let me catch up with you guys real quick, and we'll keep moving on. Ardell said he's got a radar detector and it saved him a couple of times from getting tickets. I have never, ever had any luck with it. But if you guys have, man, I'm happy for you. Kyle's asking, are rip coil packs worth it? No. No, in fact, we use stock coil packs on every nitrous and supercharged build. Frederick's saying, what's cooking, B? What's cooking, Frederick? Kyle's in for 392 scat pack. Yep. We talked about that a minute ago. Complex is in. What's up, man? Ken saying drag pack with 18s in the front and 17s in the rear. Very true. And that's the thing. I mean, it's easy to, you cannot stress how important tires are for these cars. I'm going to get to that here in just a second. Marco said his buddy hit 10s with a 6.4 cam and drag pack in his regular cab. We had a whole bunch of trucks going 10s this past weekend. Lots of 6.4 DS Rams. Man, I'll tell you what, right now, my favorite truck, if I were to build a truck, if someone just gave me a regular cab, short bed Ram and just said, here, it's yours. Do whatever you want. I kid you not, I would go car block, obviously truck intake manifold, 6.4 upper. I would probably clean up the intake manifold just because it's me and I've ported about 150 of those things. But I would do that, and I would probably just drop a stock cam 6.4 with a set of long tubes and a Y pipe in that truck, and that would be like the ultimate truck for me with 355 gears. I think that would be absolutely perfect, and it would be a low 12-second truck. We're saying, I wonder what I'm going to run with T4 Turbo and their headers on FRP tune, everything else stock. Only one way to find out. Oh, I know I would say, what's up, B? Tuned in a little late. My best mod was HP tuned with headers. Absolutely. It's the best way to go for the 5.7. We were talking about that earlier, and really for the 5.7, anything, as long as you're removing those manifolds, you'll be in good shape. Smoking saying, howdy, Professor. I have a TA392 and bought the wife a 5.7 Charger Daytona. My plan is to waterfall all my 392 parts to her car. When I upgrade, I get long tubes. She gets, what happened there? She gets the shorties. It's a win. I like it. When you take the shorties off, take a look at the welds and make sure that there's not a whole lot of weld material encroaching into that port. Some manifold, the reason why I say that, some manifolds are worse than others. Slash is in saying, hello, B. What's up, man? Smoke said, I plan to put a 370 gear in my 392 and then put my 309 in the wife's 5.7 since it's a 262 open diff. Yeah, I would definitely, it'd be a good swap for that. The 309 posi in a 5.7 actually makes the car a lot of fun. And fun fact, with the tires, let's see if I can remember this. In a 5.7 with the height of the tires in a 309 gear, I want to say that it was equivalent in terms of actual torque at the axle to a truck with 392 gears with that taller tire. Or it's the actual foot-pounds of torque at the footprint of the tire is what I really should say that. Donnie's saying, finally put a converter in my RT with the HRT stage 2 and picked up over half a tenth in the 8th. That's a whole lot in the 8th. Yeah, what converters are most? I know most Performance is using a pretty nasty torque converter with all those 5.7 builds. I tell you what, the trucks that Moe's puts out, all of them lift the left front tire off the ground by some amount. Those trucks hit the track hard. I mean, real hard. So yeah, converters make all the difference in the world with those things, especially with an HRT stage 2. For a 5.7, I can see where that would help because you definitely would be needing a little bit of converter with that. But it's a fun combination though. And again, we can get into camshafts too. My thing is, what's the best first modification? What is the gateway modification that I would suggest to get into doing this kind of stuff? That's really more the overall general feel for this. And if you notice, a lot of it has to do with tuning. Go figure. But I know how much gain that there is in tuning, and I know what it can bring to the table just in terms of performance. I mean, a perfect example of that, you guys that have been following the progress with Stormy, that thing is actually really impressive. A 321 geared truck. That's going to be changing pretty soon here. I'll get to that in a second. But 321 geared truck, but full weight. I think the spare tire was out for part of the test and part of it wasn't because of the problems that I had hitting that piece of angle iron in the highway. But it didn't really seem to make much of a difference in terms of in fact, it was easier to launch the truck with the spare tire in the truck. In fact, right now it's just laying in the back of the bed because, well, okay, here's kind of a fun, when I was towing the Hellcat over to Pites, I had the spare tire was already off the truck and in the bed of the truck. I never did put it back up underneath in the cradle because I was thinking, well, if something happens, I don't really feel like crawling around. It's already in the bed of the truck, whatever, I don't care. And no kidding. So I do all of that. Get back, turn the trailer in. A bit of a comedy of errors with the trailer. One of the trailers that I had picked up had a broken tongue. Somebody had wired that. Anyway, it was a complete disaster flick. But anyway, I turned all that in and I was going to Taco Bell because I was needing some burritos. And pulling into the Taco Bell, I hit a screw, and it was a screw. It's like one of these wall screws. Like if you can imagine this golf tee as being the screw, it went in the tire like this, and the back part was sticking out by about that much. And it was one of those long ass things. I don't know how it happened like that, but this is how it happened. So anyway, good thing because, it takes all 5 minutes when you've already got everything set out ready to go for you. But yeah, I was pulling through the drive-through and the thing on the dash, the warning lights come on and it's losing air. I was going, what the hell? I turned off the radio, rolled down the windows, and you could hear it losing air. So basically, I rolled through rolled through Taco Bell with a flat tire. Had I gone to McDonald's, I wouldn't have had that problem. So there's that. Fun stuff. Yeah, 610. See, I got you. RT's asking for 5 speeds. What's the best gear? Dude, at 370 for acceleration, I guess. 309 if you do a lot of highway driving. I wouldn't go any heavier than a 370. And here's the thing with that, and keep in mind that's a tougher. And I say that's a tougher one to find. If you give DSS a shout, and this is both a good and a bad thing, they can put together a drive shaft that'll mate a ZF diff with the NAG 1 transmission yokes. But I wouldn't necessarily suggest that I don't know, man. I'm a bigger fan of the stock drive shaft. I like the 2-piece drive shaft because they're super silky smooth at any speed. And so I would probably go, if you can find one, a 370. They're astronomically expensive. It's kind of a rare gear, and they only come in the diffs. But I say super rare. They weren't all that rare, but it was the 18-inch wheel option cars with the automatics, got the 370 gear, for manuals, and the 20-inch wheel cars got the 3.92 gears. I've driven the 3.92 gear NAG 1 cars. I've driven a few of them, as a matter of fact. So one of them was basically stock with a 392 gear, and it ran not dissimilarly from an 8-speed car, just because the gear ratios were more in line with where the 8-speed cars are with a 309 gear. One of the cars that I drove with a NAG 1 and a 392 gear, though, was a 426 and a Charger. And that 426 was putting out about 570 horsepower to the rear wheels. I mean, it was a healthy ass 426. Had one of my cams in it. And car ran really good. The only problem with that car, though, and it was lively to drive. The only thing that was weird about that car was that going down the highway, it was kind of like you were stuck in 7th gear. Like if there was a gear between 6th and 7th, that's what it was like. I think it was tacking close to 3,000 RPM at like 80 miles an hour going down the highway. So not by old school standards, not that big of a deal, but by modern standards, it just didn't, cutting the legs out from underneath it like that just wasn't all that awesome. I don't know if I'd be the right trade-off. Probably get away with a 370. Again, a 370 is rather similar to a 392 gear in a pickup truck. So there's that. But I would say that that would be about as aggressive as I would want to go. And again, if you're doing a lot of street driving, primary car, then I would certainly go with a 309 limited slip. Now with the trucks, again, Pedal Commander, definitely a good way to go. And, really, I haven't done anything else on my truck. Now, talking about Stormy, updates on Stormy. So in talking to Matt over at Moe's Performance and in just having the memory fresh in my head of towing with my truck, and to keep things kind of fresh on the channel, I want to change that truck up a little bit as I go along. And I think what I'm going to do with that truck is swap out to a set of 355 gears. Now, I'm not going to go with a set of 373s. I just don't think that there's enough of a difference between 373s and 392s to really make a difference. But 355 is basically right between 321 and 392. And that to me is, a good compromise of a gear. It'll still pull really hard on the highway the way that the 321 does. But the one thing that the 55 will help it to do is wake up a little bit on these partial throttle conditions. Even with the better gear ratios and the DT, the 321 can sometimes have a tendency to feel a little bit soft under partial throttle. And this is where it's kind of weird. If you've never driven them, the 392 is real lively under partial throttle. At wide open throttle on the highway, it seems to kind of run out of breath a little bit too quickly. The 321 has got a gear that'll take it to about 96 or 97 miles an hour on the highway if you just go watt with the thing, and it pulls real clean up there. The 392 is in a different gear. It's in a little bit less aggressive gear, which will carry it to a faster mile an hour, but it just lays over. So the 355 will help it carry to about 92 miles an hour as opposed to 96, and is a really good in-between gear all the way around. So it's going to pick up some under partial throttle. It's not going to lose anything under wide open throttle. It already doesn't hook with the 321 gear when the temperatures are nice and cool and you want to really get lively with it. And the idea is to make the 321 or the 355 gear is going to act like the 321 does in cool weather. It'll act like that when it's a little bit warmer. So it's kind of like getting the best of both worlds. And so we're going to make that switch. I don't know, just whenever our schedules can come together and do something interesting. Probably one of these weekends coming up, though, just run up there. We'll do the swap and it'll be a done deal. And I'm looking forward to seeing also, too, with that, if it picks up any mile per gallon, because the different transmission ratios in the DT Rams kind of go like this. In the middle, for 3, 4, 5, 6, they're the same. 1 and 2, though, are more aggressive. And 1 and 2, in comparison to like a DS Ram or anything else with an HP 70 transmission, 1 and 2 are a little bit more aggressive. 7 and 8 are even more of an overdrive, though, and so the truck seems to kind of lug a little bit on the highway. It doesn't ever really get comfortable until about 80 miles an hour anyway with that gear back there. So what I want to do is kind of bring that back a little bit, and I think it's going to just work less, and it might even get a little bit better fuel economy. Who knows? But the funny thing with these trucks, though, is that if you've got one of these trucks, the 321 is really good at wide open throttle. That's where the 321 does its best work. And if you're under wide open throttle conditions, even with that, there are some doldrum areas where it just kind of feels a little bit soft. But way down low and on the highway where I'm typically driving, that gear does really well. I think the 355 is going to cover that gap a little bit and make it a little bit more lively and make the truck a little bit more my own. I really do like that truck. Matter of fact, it's sitting right there on the other side in the shop, and it is shiny right now. I've got that thing gleaming. So putting a lot of miles on Buffy right now and just not driving that truck at all. In fact, I haven't even started that truck in, I haven't started that truck since I cleaned it after towing the car. So however long ago that was, that's when I drove it last. Red Dog's in saying, "What's up, B? What's up, Red Dog?" So getting back to it, we can talk about boost a lot with the 5.7 and the 6.4. Obviously with the Hellcats, first modification for the Hellcat. Again, guys, I got to tell you, if you got one, just learn how to drive the car. That's going to be the biggest thing that you can do. And the funny thing about the Hellcat versus the 5.7 and the 6.4, new Hellcat owners, one of the big takeaways that a lot of Hellcat owners come away with is, and some of you guys with Hellcats aren't going to want to hear it, it's just not as fast as you thought it was going to be. It doesn't, like, you've got a preconceived notion of what 700 horsepower is supposed to feel like, especially if you're coming from an old school place, where back when cars, a heavy car was 3,700 pounds. 3,800 pounds was considered relatively, like, that was portly, not just heavy. But back then, a 700 horsepower engine, that was, tough to come by. That was big block territory. And it's true, Hellcats make power a lot in a lot of the same way that you would expect a really well built, like, Chevy big block to make power. But the twist is that it will lull you, that car will lull you into thinking that you're not going as fast as you are. And that's where a lot of new Hellcat owners, that's where they get themselves into trouble, is that because it's got a 262 gear, it doesn't feel like it's accelerating. You don't feel like you're accelerating to the speed that you're getting to because the G-force just isn't there. The way that it can be in, like, a 5.7 with a 370 gear on a sticky tire. That's a lot of fun. That's a combination that'll really snap you back. It's real old school muscle car feel. But it's never making so much power where it's scary. It's just a fun, beefy, double meat hamburger kind of fun flavor that you get out of that thing. Just why the 5.7s are actually, I'm not going to say I prefer the 5.7, but there are a lot of things that I like about the 5.7 that you just don't get with a 6.4. So, and that's part of it. That being said, there for a hot minute, I was looking for a 6.4 again. Anyway, getting the tires. Now, this is a real important part of this. Let's say you picked up a used Scat Pack or something like that, RT, whatever it is, and you've got the 9-inch wheels. Throw a set of 275/40 Falcon Azenas tires on it. I just got through testing with those tires. They are really that good. I have more of a, how do I say this? And by the way, I paid for those things. I'm not sponsored by Falcon. If anything, I should be talking about Hoosier, but, or Continental, but they just don't make a tire in our size, unfortunately. So Falcon it was. And the Azenas the Azenas 510 from Falcon were really good in testing with the Hellcat, and they're not very expensive. But get a set of 275/40s for the back of those things. If you've got a Hellcat, get a set of 295/40s for the back of that car. They fit nice, good footprint. They hook well. They fill the fender well up really nicely. Just do it. You'll thank me later. Wheels and tires, 20 by 10.5 with a 295/40 is the way to go with these cars. Don't try to make a 305 work. They don't. 305, 3520 ends up looking like ass on the car by comparison. And unless you've got the power to really need a drag radial, you won't really see a difference between the two in terms of traction. I will tell you this. The Azenas on the highway, the Falcons on the highway at 50 miles an hour at my power level will haze the tires through the gear that it downshifts to and into the next gear. But the car doesn't ever do anything stupid or anything like that. And I did that in relatively cool air. That's all I need to know. That's all the testing I needed to do. That tire did extremely well in testing. I think you'll be happy with them. Plus, they're inexpensive. Chances are you need new shoes for that girl anyway. Go hook her up. It's going to cost you just the other side of $1,000 to really kit the thing out right. But tires are a big portion of this, and it's all about putting that power to the ground. If you are serious about getting out there and running your 0 to 60 times or doing maybe 8th mile hits on the controlled environments in Mexico, you're going to need to get a drag pack. Right now, Hoosier DBRs are the only tires that I will run because of all the issues that I've had with Mickey Thompson. Talk about the rear tires. I run the SRs on the fronts for those, but I only run DBR variants for the rears because, they're just better in terms of longevity so far as I can tell. And they balance out well. And to be honest, Mickey Thompson is, I don't know if they still are having problems, but I had way too many issues with Mickey Thompson's not balancing out, taking a ton of weight to balance out, and defects. The tires are when they come together, there's two different halves that come together and they're actually off. It was off by a significant amount to where the car was, it was pretty bad. I didn't really notice it when I bought the tires, but when the guy was mounting them, he goes, "Hey man, you need to come over here and take a look at this." And you could see it, it was kind of crazy. So anyway, hopefully they got their act together and got all that figured out. But unfortunately the DBRs just aren't DOT street legal. So, buyer beware on that. But really for anybody that's out there just goofing off, making like 0 to 100 mile an hour runs or something like that, and you want to do it with a tire, or you're out there clowning around with your friends and y'all are just doing dig hits out in the middle of nowhere, any of the ET Street Rs or DBRs will do just fine. Again, remember DBRs are not technically street legal. But more to the point, it's all about putting the power to the ground. If you want to go with a set of drag radials, I don't recommend them for daily use. And that's why I was so hyped on those Falcon Azenas. You get about 85% of whatever you think a drag radial is going to put down. I'd say even closer to 90%. That Azenas will put to the ground. It's about half again less expensive than the drag radial, and they're rated the absolute best in wet weather out of all of the tires in the category that I was looking at, which was in essence the summer high performance Y rated tire. In other words, not speed limited realistically, and something that would offer up a wear rating of say 320 or 340 and less. These tires had the best price, the highest wet weather ratings, if you will, reviews. And I mean, they just did really well overall. So great compromise of a tire all the way across. Every tire is going to be a compromise on some level. And for me, guys, drag radials anymore on the street are just not an option. I'm not racing my car on the street. If I want to put a tire on the car that's going to hook, I'm going to put a real tire on the back of my car that's I know is going to hook, that's going to be safe. Keeping in mind that my car, even with drag radials, and it's not making that much power, by the way, would still haze the hell out of a set of drag radials at 50 or 60 miles an hour. So in that respect, I mean, what's really the difference, right? But the tires aspect of it is enough of a deal to where I'll again just say, Make sure you've got fresh tires on the back of that thing. Don't try to make the tires that you have last forever. It's just they don't work like that. After about 6 or 8 years, you need to replace them anyway. They're going to start getting the compound starts to get hard after that. Red Dog saying went to Sick Week Monday and wow, some really awesome, crazy cars. I heard about that. I heard some really cool stuff going on out there. Somebody saying there's a lot of carnage at Sick Week. Ken saying I've been watching for a while and I know that you aren't a fan, but for many it's the catch can. So here's the thing with the catch can. Okay. So there's a thing with that. I don't mind the catch can thing. I really don't. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't hurt anybody. It's not a detriment to any kind of an emissions thing. If anything, it might be a good thing. I don't know. It doesn't hurt anybody. Just go ahead and do it if you want to. With one catch, and it's the most important catch that's there, and it's like you got to empty your catch can. Guys, I have, oh God, this is such a thing too. Jesus. Okay. So you put the catch can on the car and it's there so you don't get oil into the intake manifold. Let me tell you what I have seen. I've seen guys put catch cans on the car and they go, okay, well, the catch can's on the car. My work here is done. No, it's not, because what happens is if you don't regularly check it and you don't regularly empty it, keep in mind, a lot of what's in there is condensation, but that's beside the point. If you don't regularly check it and empty it, what'll happen is that it will get to a certain level. Okay, so let's say this Pepsi bottle is your catch can, and there's your oil right here, right? It'll start to get to a certain point, and when that oil gets to about like this, and it's at the top, and you haven't been changing it, what happens is the air going through there will start to siphon the oil out and it will start to suck it right out of the catch can. I've seen this happen. I mean, it's kind of crazy. And I even caught the guy and said, look, this was at the shop. I said, look, you've got to start emptying this thing. His intake manifold was full of this stuff. So it's pretty gross, but again, it sort of comes with it. So I don't have a problem with them as long as they're being emptied. Frederick saying 370 gears on a 392, good or bad? They're not necessarily bad. All right. It depends on what you're doing with the car. If you're doing a lot of highway driving, you're using the car as a daily, you're going on road trips, it's your all around automotive conveyance, I probably wouldn't do it. Only because we didn't put 370 gears in the cars to cover the numbers that we were running back in the day. And that's 1130s, 1120s. And that's with stock cars with a tune. Now, if you're going to the drag strip, you've got a tune or a tuner that knows how to work and tune around the gear, because you're going to be running into predictive shift algorithms that will and may cause it to yip. You're going to need to have somebody on board that knows how to work with that gear is what I'm saying. Also, remember that now you are running a 370 gear. You're going to have to run sticky tires on the back of the thing, or else it's not going to do you much good anyway. It's just going to light the tires up. You're going to need to remember, note to self, you cannot drive that car at the drag strip with less than a quarter of a tank of gas. When the needle hits the bottom of the needle hits the top of the line for a quarter of a tank, you do not make another pass. You immediately put 2 to 3 gallons of fuel in the car, or it will fuel yip, just like the Hellcats can fuel yip. And I fuel yipped mine, and I still think I wounded it, but the car just isn't showing it on data. So we're going to assume she is A-okay, because it's not on data and it's not consuming coolant, so it seems fine. It's just I'm surprised at this stage it didn't hurt it. So anyway, Your wife's saying, what car looks better in your opinion, the new Camaro ZL1 or the new Mustang GT500? Damn, that's a tough one. I'm going to say ZL1 only because I like the looks of an actual 6-speed manual transmission in the car. And I like the fact that if I want to drive the thing, I can drive it the way I want to. If we're talking about just purely looks, the GT5 is a damn good looking car, but I look at it and my mind's clouded with the knowledge of the people that I have known that have owned them and have had problems with them, like significant problems with them. So, man, I got to go with the ZL1. I got to go with the Camaro on that one. Smokey said, rear tires on my 392 won't last 6 to 7 years. Man, brother, I bet they don't last 6 or 7 months. Man, I know if you're anything like me, which I think you might be, rear tires don't last too long. I've already got to start looking at rear tires for Stormy, by the way. I'll let you know what I've been doing with that truck. And it's only got like just turned 8,000 miles. It turned 8,000 miles when it was towing Miss Chandelier, as a matter of fact. But getting back to it, guys, look, if you're looking to get into modifying your car and you're wanting to get into making the car more your own, all I can say is this. Congratulations on making some bad financial decisions. No, but seriously, start off with the small stuff. If you want to work within the parameters of your warranty, get you a pedal commander, Hellcat airbox, call it good at that point. You might be able to get away with a 309 limited slip. A lot of times the techs won't even bother looking at that. It just looks like another differential underneath there. It's the same case. So, a 309 limited slip diff, you might be able to get away with if you've got an RT that came from the factory with a 262. But aside from that, that's probably where I would stop initially. With the trucks, there's not a whole lot you can do that doesn't start to affect warranty aside from weight reduction. With the 392, again, keeping warranty in play just means pedal commander and a Hellcat airbox with the Hellcat air filter and the snorkel. It does a great job. And if you've got a dynamic package, maybe do the brake duct mod, which again is just cutting a certain portion of that brake ducting to allow fresh air to fly up into that cavity that it pulls air from. And really, aside from that, exhaust is a real. Here's the thing. Exhaust is a very subjective thing. We just never saw any gains from catbacks. Removing the catalytic converters didn't help at all. Nothing it seemed that we did with those cars ever did anything in terms of making horsepower. Long tubes can make a little bit of torque, but again, that's gonna murder your warranty. And you will absolutely, by the way, answer to the question that you haven't asked, but I know somebody will or might. Yes, you have to have a tune to run long tube headers. What's funny is that back in the day, guys would say, oh, we put headers on the car and it picked up 25 horsepower. No, it picked up whatever power it picked up from the tune, and it picked up some torque with that, but there were other factors, not the headers alone, that allowed it to make that kind of power. I know this because we were doing extensive testing with headers and exhausts and everything else at the shop. We tried everything. And as a matter of fact, not that it ever lost power, but it would fall off more quickly with the long tubes than it would with the shorties. And in many cases, the shorties would outpower the long tubes on the big end. So what I would suggest is don't worry about those types of modifications. Don't get into the hype of that. Stick with the basics and it'll be a whole lot of fun, and you can enjoy the car for a long, long time with just a couple of gadgets and doodads to make it a little bit more your own. And keep in mind, guys, we were running darn near 10-second quarter mile times with unopened engines with stock manifolds running through the cats with stock cat backs with just a passenger seat removed and a drag pack. So you don't have to do all the rest of the stuff to get some sick numbers out of the 392s. The 5.7s are just a great package. They're a lot of fun, more durable only because they're at a little bit lower power level, but still equally as fun as the Scat Packs in every aspect. In fact, they can be a little bit more fun because you're not worried so much about the breakage. It's just not going to break as easy. Wife's asking if you have more wear on the inside of your tires, does that mean you need an alignment? It either means you need an alignment or you're just dealing with the fact that you've got negative camber in your setup, which is how these cars are set up. Wife's also asking, is there a big difference at the drag strip between the Demon and Super Stock? No, because Super Stock is 1 horsepower less and has a different hood. That's about it. Am I wrong? Nope, you're not wrong at all. Matter of fact, there isn't a difference between the two cars. Another fun fact. So being around these cars for a long time, I know a lot of guys that have had Demons. A lot of the guys that had Demons got rid of them. They're just like, see ya. Got rid of them, and they all got Super Stocks. And they all got Super Stocks because they're going to make a Brazilian of them, and they're basically the same car. Now guys will say, okay, well, yeah, but what about, the high octane mode and all this other stuff? Oh God. Okay. So listen, I hate to tell you guys this. My Hellcat, it's a stock boost, 93 octane with a 309 gear. In fact, the 309 gear, the original one came right out of a 2016 Scat Pack. Kind of fun fact on that car. I'd since freshened it up, but again, we're using a bunch of off-the-shelf parts here. My car consistently will run as quick, like number for number, with a Demon or with a Super Stock. It's more or less the same car going down the drag strip. So, there's that. The Demon in high horse mode, in high octane mode, I should say, there is more timing in it. It's a completely different map. And yes, Ray, God rest his soul, my buddy passed away, his F8 green and his Redline red Demons. We set the original as delivered record in his F8 green car at a 978. The very next year, which was 2 years ago, he went out and ran a 977 with his Redline red car. And nobody else has done it. Nobody else has run another one of those cars in as delivered form in competition to those numbers. No, my car will not run that quick. But the idea is that there is a lot to be said for that ECU. But you can still tune and have a tune file for a Super Stock if you wanted to. You can tune it on 100 octane and it would do the exact same thing as a Demon. There's no question about it because we've seen it over and over and over again. And I'll put it to you another way. There are more than just a few 9-second Super Stocks where there's also more than just a few Demons that have gone to the drag strip, even in good air, and haven't run a 9-second pass. So just something to consider when you're looking at the two cars and trying to get a comparison contrast between the two. They've got the same engine, the same transmission, the same pretty much everything. Nothing separates those two cars. Smoking had to call somebody out. There's a guy on YouTube who claimed to gain 19 wheel horsepower from muffler delete and 19 wheel horsepower from a Hellcat airbox. I unsubscribed after that. God damn. That is hysterical. Okay, so let's talk about cold air kits and stuff like that for a minute. Hey guys, I don't know if y'all remember this video. Took the JLT off of my car. And the reason why I took the JLT off of my car was, well, to be honest with you, as much as I love the way that it sounds and I love the way that it looks, it just didn't really offer up a performance gain. And the reason why you buy something like that, if you have a Hellcat, is for the theater of it. Just because it's a noisemaker, it does whatever noisemakers do for you. But I decided that I just didn't want that look anymore. I didn't really notice the sound inside the car unless I had the windows down, which I rarely drive with the windows down in that car. But I didn't notice it. There was no real gain, and it actually lost. If you're going for a number and you're gunning for a number, everything that your whole world is decided in the first 60 feet of your pass. Provided everything goes according to plan afterwards, the car is going to run a solid number if you run a personal best in a 60 foot. And the car was constantly slower in the 60 foot with a JLT. Now you could possibly, and I don't even know if this really carries any weight. This is more of a maybe than a possibly, but say that it had a little bit better mile an hour with the JLT. I don't really know that because the quarter mile is only a quarter mile long. And I think that because it would run basically a very similar number to what it would run before, but it would run it with a worse 60 foot. It was like it was catching itself on the very back half of the track, but the data doesn't suggest that that hypothesis carries a whole lot of weight, guys. So it's one of those things that yeah, it's true that it sounds better and that it looks better, but the reality is that it just doesn't really work the way that you think it might. Oh, what the hell? Hang on. How did I do that? There we go. Your wife's asking, would you ever put hood pins in the Hellcat? Negative. I would not. Not unless they came from the factory. Right. I put a Summit sticker on my car and it gained 20 horsepower. At least. Your wife's saying if you put Hellcat wheels on your V6, it'll run Hellcat times. Yeah, I mean, everybody knows that, but I mean, that goes with the territory. And also if you when you drive the car, it'll actually add boost, but you have to make the noise or else it won't do it. So you just if you make blower whine sounds, that actually translates to boost in your engine. A lot of people don't realize that, but it's truth. I mean, it's been proven by scientists. They're smart at that. But yeah, no, the getting back to reality here. Love the look of the thing. I love the look of the JLT underneath the hood of the car. I just would have loved for this thing to, I don't know. I would have loved for this thing to actually work. You know, I would have loved for this thing to do something, but it didn't hurt anything necessarily. And so I guess by saying that, you know, it didn't hurt the car. It didn't really hurt performance. Hang on, I got to get my plugger in or over here. Because it didn't really hurt anything necessarily, it was kind of fun having it on the car, but long term, I probably would not. Hang on, let me get this thing plugged in. There we go. You know, if it's a weekend car and you're just playing around in it like I do, it would probably be fine. But if you had something that you're daily driving, I probably wouldn't mess with it. Oh, your wife seems to. Okay, that's. If you can make blower sounds while farting, man, we got to. That's. You might want to get that checked out. You might want to. That's probably you're probably doing damage to your organs. I also say, what's a better all-around car, the RT or Scat Pack, if you've never had any horsepower or high horsepower car before? I always default to the RT. The reason why I default to the RT is because it's not a slow car. Um, anybody that says the RT is slow is simply incorrect. That is from the factory, a mid to low 13-second car. That is a plenty as fast as you need to go kind of car, that you can build up from that. And so, but you're putting less stress on the transmission. The engine is under stressed. Leave the stock tune in the car, put the Hellcat airbox in the thing and with a Hellcat filter, and it'll be perfectly fine for a very, very, very long time. A pedal commander, pedal box type of a product just to wake the thing up or chill it out. If you want to chill the thing out, you can. I used to do that with my E63. If we were, my wife and I were going on a road trip or something, I'd put it in eco mode, which just means that it will not go wide open throttle unless you are all the way to the floor with the thing. In other words, like from y'all's point of view, instead of being linear, it was really like this, and it would immediately arc up. So it was super like a chill out mode. But you can go with a couple of parts like that aren't going to affect warranty. If the car came with a 262 rear gear, you can put a 309 limited slip. It's not that hard to do. And doing all of that gets you a car that's a lot of fun. It's durable and retains its value fairly well. So I got to tell you guys, there have been numerous occasions where, I thought, damn, I kind of want to build a 5.7. And my 5.7 build would be something that is just like an everyman's 5.7, because you got to remember, Houston Raceway Park's shutting down. And without that drag strip, a Hellcat, without a drag strip, it's like you're shaking hands with yourself with a Hellcat. It's the funny thing, the odd thing, and again, I've been like criticized for saying this, but as much as I love my Hellcat, I'm not a big Hellcat fan from a practical point of view. Now, that being said, I can always put my car in 500 horse mode and just play around with it like a regular car. It's like it's got two settings, street and kill, right? Well, 700 horsepower mode is fun, but what ends up happening is that you can't really enjoy all of that power on the street. You can't enjoy all of the throttle throw on the street is what I mean to say by that. Anybody that says, well, you can't enjoy that kind of power on the street, what they're talking about is you just can't play with it. You can't goof off in the car. The Hellcat it's a very stable, and it's a very forgiving car. It's a lot more forgiving than other cars that I've driven. But it is you find yourself accidentally going 120 miles an hour in the car. And if I'm saying 120 and you don't believe 120, then best believe 100 miles an hour. I'm used to driving really fast stuff regularly. And I'm telling you, you'll find yourself cruising at 90 only because it just seems like the car feels comfortable there. So the other cars really don't have that issue. Oh, RT, your wife's saying you got a V6 and is thinking the RT. The RT is real torquey compared to what you have now. It would definitely be a different car. The V6 rolls on the highway. I get that. But it just doesn't have the punch off the line the way that the RT does. The RT is a lot of fun to drive around. Smoking say the Scat is just fast enough to be dangerous to an inexperienced driver. You can say that and then some. Just like a Hellcat can be dangerous to a guy who's had older fast cars, but nothing close to 700. And see, that's where the Hellcat, it's like its blessing is its curse. It doesn't feel like 700 horsepower. Like it doesn't have the holy shit moment that you have in older cars that were even making less, 100 horsepower less. Because it's based on an old Mercedes platform and it's incredibly stable. And remember, guys, the platform that these cars were built on was designed to run 120, 140, 150 miles an hour on the Autobahn indefinitely. That's what it was based on. That's what the car's genes were forged in, was the Autobahn. And a lot of people seem to forget that. These things were all grand touring cars. They were never drag race. They were never sports cars. But they will consume a lot of highway at a lot of miles per hour with absolutely no problem whatsoever. And they just kind of, the Hellcat with a 262, a Charger Hellcat with a 262 is really good for doing stuff like that. If you want to set a car at 130 miles an hour and just cruise from point A to point B, that car will do it and then some. In fact, it'll do it and you probably won't even realize that you're doing it. Oklahoma is saying I skipped you. What'd you say? Oh, you bought Stainless Works long tubes, the high flow cats. Good deal. Red Dog saying been looking into a Starion as a project, but not many out there. Parts seem to be an issue. Yes, they are. I'd check out whatever it takes to do an LS swap in one of those. That would be pretty sick. Oh, Just Pray saying he's got the stock shaker air filter set up with the tube attached. No, stay with that. It's, in my opinion, one of the best. I mean, in fact, if I could find one, that's what, if I was in the market, I should say, for one, that's what I would be looking for, would be a shaker. Dill's asking, does the stock cold air intake that comes on the shaker 392 offer any performance gains over the non-shaker? The one thing that it does is it helps to draw air and just redirect cool air into the filter area. So in that respect, yes, it does. And again, it is not uncommon. In fact, Racer X, that Challenger, the shaker that he had, both of us ran an 1157 to the number in that car on the same day. Smoking's hanging out with Red. Red Dog saying, hit the like button. Starion. Ross asks, what are meant to be faster, muscle cars or pony/sports cars? Well, okay, so there are three different types of cars and there's three different types of fast. So a muscle car is all torque, all down low, short distance, like shotgun distance. That's where a muscle car is going to be good. Pony cars are a bit more of a compromise between a muscle car and a sports car. They're typically smaller with smaller V8s. Typically, a pony car is going to have an engine really not much larger than about 360, 370 cubic inches. And it is going to be a compromise between a little bit more of a high winding V8 and maybe a sports car sized car. And then a sports car, its focus is on handling. And the way that I look at it, a sports car is meant to be a dynamic thing. It's not a, in fact, acceleration is not at all in the forte of a true sports car. Think of it like a Miata, for example. Or one of that Toyota thing, the Scion thing with the F86. The whole idea is not for that car to accelerate well. It's for that car to handle well. It's not handling G's in this direction. It's handling G's in this direction. So they all have their own flavor of fast. They all have their areas that they do extremely well in. But you know, you can think of a muscle car more like a short distance sprint, where a pony car might be like a longer distance or a higher top speed thing, and your sports car is really more lateral G's. After that, you have supercar, and its entire focus is in top speed, or that's the idea behind it, is top speed. Also asking, are Corvettes and Vipers in a different category compared to Challengers? Yes, absolutely. Mustangs and Camaros, yes. They are considered more of a sports car, like a true supercar, actually, technically. Two-seater, large displacement engine. They're more, those cars are more of a cross between a pony car and a supercar. And I don't know, they just got big ass engines too. They're kind of in their own class. Broklahoma saying, what do you think about the MMX no tune cam? I think that if you, that's no, if you're going to put a cam in a car, you don't want to put a cam in a car that's not going to require it to. You're already spending all this money. Put a cam in the car, a proper cam in the car, and make as much power as you can with what you got. Something that's a no tune thing. I don't really believe in the no tune aspect of no tune. That also goes with the cams that are like no spring required. Yes, they are. PSI 1516s are required on every cam swap on every Hemi. Period. End of talk. The guys that say, oh, you don't have to worry about the cams or the cam profiles are actually softer because they've got more duration based on lift. That's not the point. The point is you want to put a spring in there that is going to control the heavy valve regardless. I can make a bit of an argument that they're underspringed to begin with. Let's put the right spring in the car. Anyway, let's see. Oh, you're talking about getting the exhaust for your 392 powered car. Yeah. Oh no, for a 5.7. Oh, okay, good. Stainless Works is a good company. It's what Quick Brick had on his car. What are you asking? Would I ever suggest putting an under over on an HP8 or on a 6-speed? I'm just wondering if an over under is still relevant. An over? Are you talking about an over under drive unit? Is that no? I think that's what you're asking. No, I wouldn't at all. And that's really more because I don't know that you could with the case. Now, I would not even worry about it. Your wife's saying, so the Porsche is a cross between a sports car and a supercar? No, I would say the Porsche is a true sports car. It just happens to be really fast. Your wife, man, how can it be bad for you if you're in love with it, dude? It's Valentine's Day. Reddox saying so many EVs being introduced. Yeah, have y'all noticed that EV prices are starting to drop? Like they're hemorrhaging pricing right now for existing EVs because nobody's buying them. One of these idiots. So it's funny. You can always make statistics sound however you want them to. They say numbers don't lie. Oh, but the people quoting them do. One of them was that one of the lies or one of the misdirections was, well, EV demand has more than doubled. Well, it was only at like 1%. So it's gone from 1% to 2%. And some of those people that are adopting EVs are also some of the same people that are trading them in early because of range issues, battery issues, and everything else. And you already know how I feel about EVs, especially on the used market. So, yeah, we'll see how that ends up working out for him. But anyways, well, guys, I've got to wrap it up because I got to wake up crazy early. Hopefully, what we were able to chat about helps you out. If you're on the fence about what to do, different modifications to do to your car, For you NA guys, look, stick with what works. No need to try to get into any of the cold air kits or any of that. I didn't really get a chance to touch on it because I just don't. You don't need to do it. Stick with what works. Hellcat airbox, Hellcat air filter. That's about it. Everything else, if it's a plug and play thing that's not going to affect your warranty, I say go for it because it can just make it fun. The tuning aspect is going to kill any warranty that you've got. If you're outside of warranty, probably would be okay to go ahead and start looking at that route. If you're not, man, use your own risk assessment tolerance and go with that. As far as anything else like differential braces, suspension parts, and things like that, do that after you've done the other first modification things. If you do decide to go with a diff brace and it's the kind that bolts into the cradle, don't try to hammer that thing down. Just barely snug them up enough so that you don't overload the preload on those things. Always just get them snug and then give it like a quarter turn, and or just barely get them to touch, and then kind of do a quarter or a half turn. Red Dog, thank you very much, brother. I appreciate that. Get right there at the very end, as we're signing off. Man, I appreciate the support. We definitely need it, guys. If you're not subscribed, and again, thank you, Red Dog. I really do appreciate that, brother. Right at the end, right at the wire. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. It helps the channel out a ton. It's a whole algorithm thing. It's a big deal. I appreciate all you guys interacting with me tonight too. That helps us out a ton. But with that, guys, Red Dog, thank you, buddy. But with that, I got to wrap it up. Y'all get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. And with that, that is a wrap. Take it easy, guys.